Good afternoon, everyone. This is Rochelle Seeger with the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky, and I'm so glad you have joined us today on this webinar. We've had a great turnout, and we have a huge crowd with us today, and I'm thrilled to give you information about U.S. Census 2020 and our update from Kentucky. I'm honored to work here at the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky as a Community Health Research Officer. The Foundation's mission is to address the unmet health needs of Kentuckians. The Foundation does that in a number of ways. We do that by developing and influencing health policy, improving access to care, reducing health risk and disparities, and promoting health equity. On this slide, you can see even the Foundation tries to walk the walk with respect to health policy. So this is a sign about our tobacco-free campus here in our Louisville offices. The Foundation for Healthy Kentucky is a nonprofit philanthropic organization created in 2001 with assets from a settlement agreement as a result of the merger between Anthem and Kentucky Blue Cross and Blue Shield. I've already talked to you about the mission. I work on the health data here at the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky. That includes the annual Kentucky Health Issues Poll, a telephone survey of Kentuckians on their opinions around a variety of health topics, and the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky sponsors that with another health foundation, Interact for Health. I work on our data website, KentuckyHealthFacts.org, and there we have a lot of health data on Kentucky. You can sort that by ad district, by Kentucky County, and we also have a tracking health status section of that website. Here on the screen you can see the Twitter handles that I tweet out of Kentucky Health Facts and the Foundation's Twitter handle, HealthyKY. Also part of my work here at the Foundation, I organize these capacity building series events that we fondly call Health for a Change. Health for a Change we began in 2001 to reach out to organizations just like yours who are working to improve the health of Kentuckians. We have nonprofits on the line, we have health departments, we have universities, we have a great breadth of folks who are interested in learning more about the Kentucky Census and, importantly, working to improve health for all Kentuckians. Since its inception, Health for a Change has reached Kentuckians in every Kentucky county with nearly 3,000 participants. So thanks to each of you for being on the line here today. And this is a really exciting topic for me because it's one that's near and dear to my heart, which is health and data. And critical to that is the 2020 census and all of the census. So I'm thrilled to have our Kentucky Partnership Specialist here with us today to present you everything that she knows about Kentucky Census happenings. I'm going to turn the call over to Michelle Ellison. Michelle, welcome.
Great. Thank you so much, Rochelle. I really appreciate the opportunity to be involved with this webinar today. As Rochelle said, I am the Partnership Specialist in Kentucky. I'm part of a team of Partnership Specialists. I'm basically the gal that has been working over the last couple of years to prepare our state for the upcoming 2020 census. I live here in Kentucky. I've spent about 20 years living in central Kentucky and just recently relocated to Louisville. But I work out of the Philadelphia Regional Census Center, which is responsible for census outreach in our state. And what I want to do is just start off by getting everybody on the same page as to why the census is important. I've learned in my outreach to community leaders that a lot of people don't really understand just all the different ways that census data actually affects their everyday life. So I'm not going to read all these different 50 ways here, but I did want to provide you with this information as you will all get these slides after this webinar, but I did want to just show you right off the bat 50 ways that census data are used so you can help us communicate this to community members and to the constituents and the populations that you serve. I would like to get us all again, just on the same page as to why the census is important. I know that many of you understand that the census is actually mandated in the Constitution of the United States. We are required every 10 years to conduct an actual count of every single person living in the U.S., every single person. And of course, the main reason for that is apportionment. The 435 seats in the House of Representatives are apportioned based on our data. Now, Kentucky had 7 seats in the House of Representatives. We actually lost a seat after the 1990 census. So we want to make sure that we don't lose another seat in Congress. But, you know, census data is also used for redistricting. And that's everything from legislative districts to voting districts to school districts. As many of you all know, businesses use census data regularly to conduct market research, to determine where new stores need to be located, to even determine what they're going to sell in those stores. You know, Target is a perfect example. Target uses our American Community Survey data to determine what they're going to sell, what products they're going to sell in their stores. They don't sell the same things in the Northeast as they do down south, and they look at our data to help plan what they're going to sell. Planners also use census data to try to determine where new roads need to be built in a community, where new schools are needed, where new hospitals are needed. I often refer to the census as the ultimate RSVP. I mean, you can't plan for an event or a conference if you don't know how many people are going to attend. Well, you can't plan for an emergency like an ice storm or a tornado if you don't know how many people in your community are going to be affected by that emergency. But this right here is probably the biggest thing that people don't realize, which is just how much funding is tied to census data. Over $675 billion every year for the next decade will be allocated to state and local governments based on our numbers. $675 billion. That's a huge amount of money, and it's really hard for people to sort of wrap their brains around a number that large. So George Washington University is actually working on a study right now to try to put a per capita amount on the importance of participating in the census. And for the state of Kentucky, they looked at just the top 16 federally funded programs, just the largest federally funded programs. And keep in mind that there are over 300 federally funded programs, but they looked at just the top 16, and for our state came up with a number of $2,021 per person. So think about that for a moment. I bet everybody that's listening on this webinar, I bet everybody can think of a family of 5 in their community, a mom, a dad, 3 kids that for whatever reason are going to be reluctant to participate in the census in 2020. That's over $10,000 every year for the next decade that won't be coming into our Kentucky communities because that one family chose not to participate. I mean, that's a huge amount of money. And it's why it's so important that we work with organizations like yours to help get the message out to everybody in Kentucky that the census is safe, it's easy, and it's important to participate. Now, I'm going to show you a little bit about how our state did in previous censuses. When I started working for the census, it was back in 2000. I was a college student actually at Lexington Community College. And at that time, only 72% of Kentucky households self-responded to the census. That means they received their questionnaire in the mail, they filled it out, they completed it, they returned it with no problem. Only 72%. Now I want to be clear, that doesn't mean that the other 28% wasn't counted. that means that we had to spend a lot of taxpayer dollars to hire a large army of foot soldiers, so to speak, and train them and send them out into the field to knock on people's doors, sometimes as many as 6 and 7 times, to collect that information from the households that didn't respond. That's what we are trying to avoid. We're trying to just get everybody to self-respond to the census questionnaire when they receive it. Now, keep in mind that in Census 2000, we had both a short and a long census form. I don't know if any of y'all remember the long form, but in previous censuses, we would mail a questionnaire to every household in America, but a small sample of those households would get a much longer, more detailed form that asked everything from employment questions to income questions to housing questions, all very important information to collect about our communities. But what we found was that by only collecting all that important information once every 10 years, by the time that we published it and made it available to the public, it was already outdated. Our communities are changing so quickly that we realized we needed to change as well. So what we did is we took that long form of previous censuses and we turned it into the American Community Survey, which I think many of you are familiar with. But this is a monthly survey that we do now to collect more up-to-date information. Now, it's important that you all understand this because even though I am talking to you about the decennial census, the 2020 census, it's important that you know that at any given time there are field reps out in your communities working, knocking on doors, and collecting information for the many monthly surveys that we do, including the American Community Survey. So we are actually out there collecting information every single month of every single year, not just every 10 years. So I would encourage you to not only encourage participation in our 10-year surveys, but also make sure that the people and the communities that you serve understand just how important it is to also respond to these monthly surveys that we're out there collecting information for. Now, in 2010, we were actually able to increase Kentucky's response rate to 77%, which was fantastic. And a big reason that we were able to do that is because we had 192 complete count committees established across our state. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that in a minute. But complete count committees are basically made up of the trusted voices in the community that can help us deliver a message to those hard-to-count populations in our states. So these maps here kind of show, in 2000, the darker red areas are the areas that we had the lowest response for the census. And of course, in 2010, we were able to improve that, but still a lot of our eastern Kentucky counties had low responses. Now, a couple exciting things that are happening in 2020. For the first time ever, for the first time in history, we are going to offer an online response option. So people, the idea is it is going to be so easy to complete your census questionnaire in 2020 that you can be sitting in a doctor's office in the waiting room and pull out your smartphone and take the 10 minutes right there that it takes to respond to your census questionnaire. So that is really exciting. Another big change that is coming in 2020 is that we've actually automated the recruiting process and the training process. We will have lots of jobs available, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that as well. But for the first time ever, people that want these temporary census jobs will no longer be going to libraries to be tested or going to community centers to do handwritten tests, but they're actually going to go online and submit their application on the online website. And then if they get hired, we're actually going to do a lot of the training utilizing CBTs or computer-based trainings. so people can do that at home, which is pretty exciting. Now, keep in mind that Census Day is April 1st of 2020, so we are pretty close. I think we're about maybe 40 days away from the 1-year out mark to Census Day. Now, one thing I want to show you real quickly, when I look at these two maps, it really shows that some of our eastern Kentucky counties are areas that we really need to focus our efforts. So we started early in eastern Kentucky, and I was thrilled when Hazard Community and Technical College wanted to partner with us to do something to increase awareness about the census in their area. So they actually hosted our state's 2-year out event. They hosted a Census Solutions workshop, and it was really exciting. They invited community leaders from all, a variety of eastern Kentucky counties. The former Governor Paul Patton was there to start the event. And what they did was actually break everybody up into groups and lead. Professor John Nash from the University of Kentucky was there to lead an ideation session, a design thinking workshop where we got the community leaders from Eastern Kentucky brainstorming ways that we could better tailor our message in Eastern Kentucky to increase participation. I was thrilled that several members of our headquarters from DC were there at this event, and they were able to take a lot of that feedback back to Census Bureau headquarters. Another thing we've been focused on in Eastern Kentucky, and actually schools all across the state, is trying to encourage teachers and principals to incorporate statistics in the classroom to help teach our students about the importance of the Census Bureau and also send a message back to their families. So one of the things that we've done that's pretty unique to our state is we partnered with schools on Constitution Day, which was September 17th. Apparently every September, schools that receive federal funding are required to teach something about the Constitution in honor of the signing of the Constitution. And since the census is actually Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution, we approached several different schools across the state and asked them, would you consider making your Constitution Day activities focus on the census this go around? And I wanted to show you one of our farthest eastern Kentucky counties, Letcher County. Their elementary school really took this to heart. They used our free Statistics in Schools materials from our census.gov/schools website and taught the students in their kindergarten class, first grade class, second and third grade classes about the importance of the census, and actually had them using the data to do different classroom activities. So this is something that we are hoping to repeat this September of 2019 in every classroom across Kentucky. And it wasn't just our K through 12 schools that participated. Colleges and universities are also required to do some type of educational program about the Constitution in September. And several of our community colleges and our public universities participated last year. Big Sandy Community College in Eastern Kentucky was one that hosted an event called Who Counts Everyone, and use that as an opportunity to increase awareness about the upcoming census to their students. So again, this is something that this September 17th, we are hoping that every college and every university across our state will participate in to help increase awareness. Now, I want to talk to you just a little bit about who are our hard-to-count populations in Kentucky. This map identifies the areas of Kentucky, like the dark red areas are the areas that have been identified as our low response score areas, or the areas that are at highest risk of being undercounted in 2020. And this is based on previous censuses. And this is also based on the monthly surveys that we do, like the American Community Survey. So this is where we have really been focusing our efforts for the last couple years to make sure that we are doing significant outreach in these areas of low response score areas. Now, one thing I noticed right off the bat when I saw this map was that there is a college or a university in almost every one of these low responding areas. So one of the first things that we did was partner with our community colleges and our universities. And each of those green dots on here are universities and colleges that have partnered with us in this effort already. But who are these hard-to-count populations in these areas? Well, number one is renters. Renters have historically been a challenging population to get to respond to the census questionnaires. I don't know if it's because they are highly mobile, maybe they don't have that invested tie to the community. As our field reps know, oftentimes they live in buildings that have locked doors or locked gates, and we can't even get access to their apartments. But renters have always been something that's been challenging to get them to respond to the census. Low-income households have historically been hard-to-count populations as well. Seniors. Seniors are very near and dear to my heart, and seniors have not really historically been a hard-to-count population, but I included them on this because of the changes that we're experiencing in 2020. I think about my grandma, for example. I think about the first letter or mailing she's going to get in the mail for 2020 is going to be directing her to go online and complete her census questionnaire. As you know, we are constantly warning our seniors, don't give out your information over the phone, don't give out your personal information online, or don't answer the door if you don't know who's knocking, which is all wonderful, but we do need to make sure that we are educating our seniors that it is so important for them to respond to the census questionnaire in 2020 because so many of their senior services are dependent on us having an accurate count of where the need is in our community. African American males are another group that have historically been undercounted in previous censuses. I think this is kind of interesting. We only learned that after World War II, when more African American males enlisted in the military than we actually had numbers for in the census. That was this huge eye-opener for us that we have an entire underserved population that we really need to focus on making sure we're getting an accurate count of. These last three I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about: our foreign-born population, our college students, and our children. Concerning our foreign-born population, Kentucky has a large amount of immigrants, of migrant workers here, especially on horse farms throughout the state, of refugees. We have a lot of people living in Kentucky that may or may not be citizens of the United States. But it's important to understand that the census counts everybody. Regardless if you are a citizen or not, you are here, you are driving on the roads, you are shopping in the stores, you are utilizing the resources. So we need to make sure that we are counting everybody that lives here in our state. And we do understand that many non-citizens are fearful that participating in the census could expose them or their families to harm. And the best thing that we can do is to work with the trusted voices in those communities and ask them to help relay a message for us. And that message is quite simply the same law that requires us to collect this information every 10 years also protects the information that we collect for 72 years. You can't get any information from the Census Bureau in anything but statistical format for 72 years. So no personal identifiable information will be released. We protect that. We have a lot of protections in place. And it's very important that people understand that the information that we collect is confidential. We are exempt from the Patriot Act. The Supreme Court has consistently upheld and strengthened the laws that protect the data that we collect. I mean, even the President of the United States cannot get any information from the Census Bureau in anything but statistical format. So we really need to make sure that people understand that it is safe and it is important for them to respond to their census questionnaire. Another hard-to-count population out there is college students, and this is something that I really think that we can solve in Kentucky. We do have a lot of colleges and universities across the state, and our college students, I'll be honest, they are just one of the big challenges with counting college students is they're just simply difficult to catch at home. They are highly mobile. When we actually invite them to participate in the census, those invitations go out in March. A lot of times it's right in the middle of their spring break. It's right in the middle of March Madness basketball. They're focused on midterms. It's very hard. The timing of the census is very hard to get our college students to respond to that census questionnaire. Additionally, our college students often live in dormitories or they're renters. And again, I said renters are a historically challenging population to count. Our college students tend to live with roommates. And this is interesting because the way we conduct a census is we deliver one questionnaire per household. And we ask one person in that household to step up as the head of the household and fill out that questionnaire for everybody that lives there. It's very difficult sometimes to get one college student to respond to that questionnaire with accurate information about everybody that he or she lives with. And unfortunately, more often than not, when they do respond to the census, they often list their parents' address on their census form instead of their campus address where they live and stay most of the year. This is very important. We want our college students to understand that if they are living and staying most of the year on their college campus address, even if they go home every summer, or if they go home every Christmas break, we want them to be counted on their campus address, again, because that is where they're using most of the resources. That's where they're driving on the roads the most. That's where if they get sick, that's where an ambulance is going to come to their campus address. So we want to make sure they're counted in the right place. But it's important to also educate the parents of college students too. A lot of times college students get counted twice in the census because they count themselves at a campus address and then their parents also list them on a form. So we need to make sure parents understand where they should be counted. Now another challenge with counting college students is if we can't get them to fill out their form, by the time we actually go out and knock on their doors to collect that information, it's May, June, July. They've already gone home for the summer. So more often than not, we're counting on, we're knocking on vacant addresses. There's also a considerable foreign-born population and exchange students among our college students. But this next group, this one has really got me this decade. I was not really aware about the problem with the undercount of children until I started working with Kentucky youth advocates. And my partner over there, I've been working with a gal, Amy Swan, who has just been wonderful and has helped open my eyes to just how serious this problem is. Children under 5, so children age 0 to 4, are the #1 largest undercounted age population across the nation. In Kentucky alone, it's estimated that 8,000 children were missed in the 2010 census. 8,000 children age 0 to 4. And why does that matter? Well, here's the thing. Here's the problem. Mom and Dad will get that census questionnaire in the mail. They'll complete it. They'll fill it out. but they will leave their small children off that form. They will leave their babies and their toddlers off that form. And I think about it like this. I have a toddler. This is my little boy right here. He's just turned 3 years old, and I think if I don't include my toddler on the 2020 census, I don't get another chance to get that right or correct that until 2030. And by that time, my toddler has already gone through elementary school, middle school, and will be in high school. And there was never any funding allocated for them. When you hear about the problems of overcrowded classrooms and underfunded schools across our state, this undercount of children has a direct impact on that. I can't tell you how many superintendents in Kentucky I have spoken to that tell me, I can tell you exactly how many kids live in this district because I can tell you exactly how many we serve, and our numbers are different than your Census Bureau numbers. And they're probably right. They probably have more accurate information. The problem is it's our numbers, it's the Census Bureau numbers that are going to be used to determine the funding that comes into those schools for the next decade. All the Title I funds that come into schools are based on census data. So it is really important that we work with our schools, our teachers, our principals and superintendents, and make sure that they understand just how connected and how tied census data is to the funding that's coming into their schools for the next decade, and help us educate families and make sure everybody in their district, every child in their district gets counted. This graph here shows that children age 0 to 4 are the largest undercounted age population. And this graph over here shows that the problem has just been getting worse since 1980. So this is something we're really focused on correcting. There's several reasons that children are often undercounted. Non-biological children tend to be left off census questionnaires more than others. So these are our foster kids and our adopted kids. Kentucky also has a considerable amount of grandparents raising grandchildren. And a lot of times, for example, our grandparents may be living in senior housing where they're not supposed to have their grandchild living there with them. So when the census form comes, maybe they're reluctant to include their grandchild on that form because they think it's somehow going to get them in trouble with their landlord. So we really do need to educate the grandparents and parents and make sure they understand that there are no repercussions. We are not connected with any of those other agencies. We are just simply trying to get an accurate count of the kids in our state that we need to make sure we have adequate funding for. Also, there's fear of repercussions among our foreign-born population. We have a lot of parents. They might not be citizens of the United States, and they might be reluctant to respond to their census questionnaire, but their child may be a citizen of the United States, but because they were reluctant, their child didn't get counted. Their child didn't get included on that questionnaire. And then a lot of the parents of our small children are actually just part of our hard-to-count populations anyways. Families with babies and toddlers tend to be our renters across the state. They tend to be young parents that live in low-income households. So these are a lot of problems that we are working with organizations like Kentucky Youth Advocates to try to make sure that we can correct this go-around in Kentucky. Now, how can we solve these problems? How can we make sure that all our hard-to-count populations understand how important it is to respond to the census questionnaire? The big way that we are doing that is through complete count committees. We are trying to establish a complete count committee in every county of Kentucky. So we need at a minimum 120 complete count committees established across the state. And we've already got a pretty good start on that. I think we're up to about maybe 25 or 30 committees that have already been formed or trained or are scheduled to be trained. So what this committee is it's usually appointed by the highest elected official. So these are our county judge executives in Kentucky or our mayors. And we ask them to pull together the community leaders in their county that have outreach to our hard-to-count populations. Now, this committee is tasked with developing and implementing a census awareness campaign that will motivate every resident in their community to complete the census thoroughly and return it in a timely manner. It's important that we have these committees in each county because we need to localize the message. You know, what works in our eastern Kentucky counties is not going to be what works in our western Kentucky counties. It's not going to be what works in our big cities like Louisville and Lexington. That's why we need local people, local knowledge to help us deliver a message to everybody in their area that the census is safe, it's important, and it's easy. So of course we want someone from the school district serving on this committee. We also want someone from the faith-based community serving on the committee. I'll tell you, you know, there are plenty of people out there, they're not going to complete their census because they saw an ad on TV telling them to do it, or because their governor or their mayor told them to do it. But they just might complete their census if their pastor reaches out to them and explains how important it is to their faith-based organization that their community has an accurate count. They just might do it if their child's teacher reaches out and explains how important it is to the next 10 years of their child's education that everybody gets counted. So a lot of these organizations are here on this webinar right now. You know, I know we've got members of the Extension Office who have outreach not only to our youth through the 4-H programs, but also to you know, our rural communities. We have a lot of representatives from our libraries that can help get this information out. And you guys have the ability on these committees to really talk about why census data matters to you and help convey that message to the people in your community. So I'm going to let Rochelle talk a little bit about why census data matters, you know, in the work that she does here.
Thanks, Michelle. I also saw folks from Kentucky hospitals, universities also on the call, so it's great that everyone's joined us here today. As I mentioned, I work as a community health research officer, but my whole career here at the foundation, my whole career has been working on trying to improve health. So when I think about health, I want to know what's the extent of the problem in my community. So this is just a screenshot for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which shows Kentucky birth data and leading causes of death. So even when I just look to these numbers, many of them are rates. So how many people in Kentucky have heart disease by the number of people in Kentucky. So right there, any health data that I think of is tied to this U.S. Census and will tell me where in Kentucky I can go to help improve the problem. Likewise, if I wanted to work on helping childbearing women have healthy births, we can look to that data and think about how many babies are born with low birth weight. Where are they in Kentucky? How old are the mothers that are having low birth weight babies? So all of these health data points, which describe what's happening in our community, are ultimately connected to the census. And finally, just a screenshot from the Foundation's website, KentuckyHealthFacts.org. When we look at any of these measures of tracking health status, like smoking or dental visits in the last year, drug overdose deaths, that drug overdose deaths are age adjusted and typically reported per 100,000 population. So getting that population number in Kentucky is critical to understanding all of these different measures of health data in our state. Michelle, we do have some questions coming in from our audience, and here's one. If you know this off the top of your mind, it's about, the question is, how many American community surveys are done each month?
Ooh, that is a good question. I know we do a sample of each of the population. So I don't know that exact number, but I can find that out for you. I do know that maybe some of the field reps that actually collect information for the American Community Survey are on this webinar. So if you all know that answer, let me know, but otherwise I can follow up and find that for you.
Great, thanks. We have a number of questions, and I know we can only get to a couple of them. One other question we have from our audience is, do you know how many questions will be on the 2020 census?
Yeah, so the 2020 census is very basic. Since we no longer have a long form, it's very basic questions. It's name, age, race, ethnicity. Do you own or rent your home? How many people live in your home, and how are each of those people related to each other? And then, of course, a possible citizenship question. And I see that there's a lot of questions about that as well. So that is something that's still being duked out between the Department of Justice and at the Department of Commerce level. But right now there is the possibility that a citizenship question could also be added onto the census questionnaire. But the questions are very basic, and I would say for a lot of people that are reluctant to respond to their census questionnaire because they feel like, that's too much information to share with the government. I mean, honestly, most people have that much information and more on their Facebook pages, but it doesn't really do any good for their community as it does with responding to the census questionnaire. So whatever the questions end up being, it's important that we make sure everybody understands how important it is to respond to them and for us to collect accurate information. I do want to show you, we were talking about complete count committees, and I want to let you know for the state of Kentucky, I'm pretty proud. We were one of the first states that established on the state level a complete count task force. We actually started working with our governor's office in 2017, so about the 3-year out mark. They hosted the initial 2020 census kickoff meeting and have been very supportive of this effort. In March of 2018, so about the 2-year out mark, the governor actually signed an executive order officially creating the Kentucky Complete Count Task Force, which is chaired by John Park, who's the Director of Constituent Services. And I got to give a shout out here to Dustin Isaac, who's his assistant and has been super helpful in encouraging our elected officials and our community leaders to participate and to help support these efforts. And then also on the municipal level, our 2 largest cities, so both Louisville and Lexington, started very early in their preparations for the census. And if you think about it, in Fayette County and in Jefferson County, just those 2 counties alone, about 1/4 of our state's population lives in just those 2 counties. So it was really important that we got something started in Louisville and Lexington early. This is our Louisville Complete Count Committee, which is chaired by the Deputy Chief of Staff of the Mayor. The Mayor was actually there to attend the first meeting in March. He was very knowledgeable about the census, and they've been super helpful in helping get the word out in Louisville and focus on the efforts or focus on the situations that are unique to a municipality or a big city. One of the tools that we provide to our Complete Count committees is pretty neat, and I wanted to share this with you. We have an application called the Response Outreach Area Mapper, or ROAM as we call it. And this is the website where you can go to this ROAM app. And basically what it is a big map of our nation, and you can zoom in to our state and you can zoom in specifically to your county or to your city. So right here I have zoomed in on Louisville, and Shelby County is right next door. And what this map does is it identifies, again, the areas of our communities that are at highest risk of being undercounted in 2020. These are our low response score areas. So the darker blue areas are the areas that we're most focused on. And this is a really useful tool for our Complete Count committees because it actually lets them focus their efforts, where it's needed more. So they can use this map. I'll give you another example. I recently did a presentation in Shelby County, And these two tracks right here were kind of the darker areas. So I zoomed in on that, and when you click on those areas, a box comes up that gives you all the demographic information for that track. So looking at this specific track right here and wondering, why is this a hard to count area? Why has this been identified as being a low response score area? And looking right here, renter occupied housing, 68% of that track right there alone is renters. And as I mentioned, renters are very difficult to get to respond to census questionnaires. Another interesting thing from here, the foreign-born population, and that track right there, that's 18%. That's a pretty large percentage of foreign-born population. So again, this is a tool that our committees can use to help identify, the areas that they need to focus on. Real quickly, I want to go over the timeline for our state. We are 2019. We are almost to the 1-year out point. We are currently seeking applicants from every county in Kentucky as we have thousands of positions to fill in our region. So I'll give you a little bit more information about that in a second. I mentioned that we are focused on training our complete count committees across the state. Once a community leader or a judge or a mayor forms their committee, we're asking them to reach out to us, the Census Bureau, and we have a team of partnership specialists coming on board in Kentucky that can come out and actually provide a very structured training. It's the same training that committees all across the nation are receiving, so they can get started with their outreach efforts. April 1st is our 1-year out mark, and that is when you are going to see events all across the nation promoting that we're at that 1-year out point. So I hope in your communities there will be some kind of an event or some kind of an awareness campaign to help people realize where we are on that timeline. In the summer of 2019, we're going to be opening 2 temporary offices in Kentucky. One will be located in Louisville and one will be located in Lexington. And those 2 offices will be responsible for hiring the thousands of positions that we're going to have across the region. Also in August of 2019, we're actually going to start our very first operation, which is address canvassing. We're going to have boots on the ground in Kentucky this summer. So I know a lot of people think, oh, 2020 is so far away, we've got time to work on this. We actually don't. This summer we're starting our first operation where we're going to have people walking around and updating the addresses in our community. So we need to make sure that we're working with complete count committees to get that information out there so that people know what we're out in the communities doing. August 2019, we're also launching our Statistics in Schools materials for the 2019-2020 year. So I'm thrilled about this. We are going to provide teachers and schools the resources that they need for free to teach about the census, to make sure that their students and their families understand how important the census is. Oftentimes, the best messenger for parents about the census is their children. If you can get children excited about it, if you can get kids coming home to mom and dad and saying, hey, have the forms come yet? Oh, I'm going to get extra credit in my class if I can show that we responded to our census questionnaire. Any kind of creative ways that we can make sure to send a message home to parents through our students, letting them know how important it is to count their children. That's what we're going to be focused on. So we are going to provide the tools that are needed. And we're going to ask in September, at least in Kentucky, this is something kind of unique for our state, but we're going to once again partner with our Kentucky educators and ask them to incorporate in their Constitution Day activities in September a census theme so we can begin utilizing those materials. Now, March 2020 is go time. Okay, March is when the forms are going to be delivered, or actually I take that back. With the online option this go around, March is when the invitations to participate in the census are going to arrive at every household across Kentucky. And to be honest, you guys, it is right smack dab in the middle of March Madness basketball when this is happening. So we need to make sure that we have partnered with, Coach Cal and Coach Mack and our basketball teams to make sure they're helping get that message out, especially to college students, to respond to the census questionnaire at that time. April 1st, as I mentioned, is Census Day. And then for Kentucky, this is kind of interesting. We have something to kind of help us keep track of the timeline, because Derby weekend is that final reminder, that final push in our state. If you haven't completed your census, go ahead and self-respond so that we don't have to send someone to your property to knock on your door. May through July will be the non-response follow-up campaign, so that's when we're actually going out and knocking on people's doors. And then, of course, we'll have the thank you campaign after that. So quickly, in the few minutes that I have left, I just want to show you, I mentioned we're going to be opening 2 offices, one in Lexington and one in Louisville. This is how we're dividing up the state for the counties that each office is responsible for. These are some of the pay rates for the jobs in these offices. These are very good paying jobs. Everything from here down, recruiting assistants down, are going to be work from home jobs, meaning you don't have to report to an office. These are good temporary positions. They look good on a resume. So we want to make sure to get as many people as we can applying for these positions. The way to do that is right here. This is the online application website. So I tell people, anybody that is interested, possibly interested in a job, anytime from now all the way until the end of 2020, go ahead and go online, go to this website, and it takes about 30 minutes to submit your application, and your name will stay in that applicant pool all the way to the end of the 2020, of our operations. So this is where you can apply for all those in-field positions, and also for a lot of the office positions that are coming up. We have included some links here to some YouTube videos that provide a better explanation of the jobs that are coming down the line. And right now on usajobs.gov, there are several positions posted across Kentucky. These are good paying jobs. I mean, anywhere from $50,000 to $95,000 a year, full-time, full benefits. Partnership specialist positions like myself, media specialists, regional technicians. There's a lot of jobs right now in Kentucky that are posted on USA Jobs. A lot of them have closing dates, like this media specialist closes on the 21st. So help spread the word about these jobs. And then something kind of unique for our state too, is a lot of people don't realize, but right across the river from us, in Jeffersonville, Indiana, right across the river from Louisville, I think it's the first exit, is the actual National Processing Center for the Census Bureau. And they have thousands of jobs that they are going to be hiring for as well. So there are so many opportunities in our state if you want to work for the census either in an office environment, or if you'd rather work from home or in the field. There are tons of opportunities to participate and to be a part of history. And then quickly I want to show you how you can connect with us. This is our our 2020 census.gov webpage. If you go there, there is a link right here where you can get email updates. I know we all get a lot of emails, so feel free to unsubscribe after 2020, but I would encourage you to go ahead and get on there and start getting the information directly from the Census Bureau. There's also another link there where you can sign up to be a partner. And I would actually ask you to connect with us on social media so that you can help share this information with your constituents. And then my final slide here, people always ask, how can we partner with the 2020 census? I'm not going to go through this, but here are ways that you can help us and you can help your community to make sure that everybody is counted. Because the one message I want to leave you with is we are going to do a census. We're required by law. It's mandated in the Constitution. We are going to do a census regardless. And whatever numbers we come up with in Kentucky, we are going to be stuck with those numbers for the next 10 years, for the next decade. But by working with our community partners, working with people like you, we can ensure that at least in our state, in Kentucky, that information we collect is accurate, it's complete, and it will have a positive effect on the quality of life in our state for the next 10 years. So I would really encourage you to reach out and help us educate the community about why this matters for our state. Thank you so much.
Michelle, this is great, and we have just a few more moments. A number of people have chatted in this question. They want to find out how they can get involved in their community with a complete count. So quickly, where can they go to find that person in Kentucky? They want to get connected.
Yes, so the very first thing I would ask them to do is reach out to your highest elected official, your judge, your mayor, and ask them if they have formed a complete count committee in their county yet. And if they haven't, encourage them to do that and offer to serve on that committee. If they have, they can provide you the information for that. I would also, if you have specific ideas, at the beginning of this slide I provided my email address, so feel free to contact me directly and I can let you know what work we've done in your area already, and if we haven't, if we have a partnership specialist in that area that I can connect you with directly that can help you determine the best things that you can do in that area to help get the word out. So yes, reach out to us, reach out to your elected officials, and really make sure they understand that this matters to you and it matters to the community.
Thanks, Michelle. A reminder to everyone on the call that we will have this full slide deck available to you, so you have all the contact information and the URL. Here at this website, this is our Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky Health for a Change website. We do have 2 upcoming events. On May 22nd, we'll be in Madisonville, where Dr. Ellen Hahn with the Kentucky Center for Smoke-Free Policy will be hosting an in-person workshop on smoke-free campaigns, so please feel free to join us there in Madisonville. And on June 19th, join us. We'll be continuing the conversation on another webinar with Michelle and also our colleague that she mentioned, Amy Swan at Kentucky Youth Advocates. So please mark your calendar for June 19th so you can join us again to continue this conversation. I'm thrilled to see all of you from a lot of different sectors, including our nonprofits and our foundation sector who are interested in this topic. It's very exciting for me personally. With that, I would love for you to complete our post-event survey. I will send you an email today with a link to the SurveyMonkey to give your feedback on this webinar today. It only takes a few minutes, and also there you can suggest topics for future Health for a Change trainings. I will also send you a one-page PDF that I've created with additional census-related resources that links to places like the Council on Foundations, Ford Foundation, of course our Kentucky State Data Center, and others that have done a lot of work around the 2020 census. And there you can also find a link to additional resources, people who want to learn more about what's currently happening with the citizenship question. So I'll send that out to you. Please take a moment to give us your feedback. I'm quite interested in that as a data lover. Finally, this is our website, healthy-ky.org. If you're not already on our mailing list, you can add your name to our mailing list there to get information about future events and what's happening here at the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky. It's been thrilling to have Michelle Ellison with us from the Census Bureau. I think we're getting a great start and we'll be ready for 2020. Thanks everyone for your time this afternoon. Great to see a huge crowd on this webinar so that we can do what we need to do for improving the health of Kentucky and to have a complete count on our 2020 census. Thank you so much for joining us today.